Alright, hello there. We're going to take a look at Westclox pocket watch here and how to disassemble it, or to do some basic disassembly. See, I've got the movement here already out of its case, and I already have the dial here removed. The dial is simply held in place with some tabs on the movement. You can see that there are tabs here. And there are places where the tabs go on the movement. There's notches. So one there, and one there. So you'll need to remove those first. Remove the hands and then carefully bend those tabs back in order to remove the dial. And then this is what the dial side of the movement will look like. Now, to get the movement out of the case, you have to pull the stem out. The movement itself just snaps in the case. There's a spring snap here and a spring snap here. Newer movements won't have these snaps. There'll be a metal piece of spring steel that runs across the back of the movement to hold it in its case. You just pop that off. To get the movement out of the case, though, you've got to pull the stem out. To do that, there is a button right here that has a groove turned in it. See the groove turned in there? You can use your thumbnail or other fingernail to pull up on that piece like that, and then you can pull the stem out. When you're recasing the movement, you're going to want to pull up on that again and push the stem down in as far as it will go, and then make sure that that seats back. And then to test that it works, make sure that you can operate the winding and setting piece like that. And this is where you can see how that works. There in the setting position, it just runs through some gearing to the hand there, and then pushed in, you can wind it like that. So this is how you take the movement down. Well, here's the hour hand wheel. Usually, when you're taking one of these apart, you don't have to pull the hour hand off. It can stay with the dial. This will lift off with the dial. All you've got to do is remove the seconds hand and the minute hand. So do that very carefully so you don't damage them. Just pull. They're a friction fit. They pull straight off. So once we have this taken care of, we're gonna hold this back with your thumb or a screwdriver, and then let the spring down. Let it slip through your fingers over here on the crown, and make sure that the spring is down. You don't want any tension left in the barrel. So there's still some tension there. So go back here and take it till you can get the click off, and then wind it back like that. Now there's no tension at all. Now we can remove the barrel bridge. And the barrel bridge is held on with a couple of screws there. Use a screwdriver that fits the hole correctly. the screws removed, the bridge comes off, and there's the spring. Then you have to work the barrel off of the center pinion, and the best way to do that is to flip the movement over and push the arbor through, take off this, and as you can see, the barrel assembly fell down out of the way. Now, in the case of the gentleman I'm making this video for, if all you need to do is work on the winding and setting crown, you can get pretty good access to it right there now. You can see kind of what's going on. Get the light here where you can see what's happening here. You can see it's just a fork metal piece that holds that in place, and when you move up on this your finger, it just moves it out of the way so that you can withdraw the crown. And then push it back into place. So you see there's two fingers there that does the work, and that's what could become damaged. And if you've got some small pliers, you can bend those fingers back into position, or bend this back to where it catches on the end of the crown again. So we're going to put this back in there, and then we push back on that, and it holds it in place. And you can see the, oops, I just pulled it out. With the watch not in the case, you see how much lateral play there is? With the watch not in the case, it's very easy to pull it out if you tip it too far. The case sort of forms a bearing sleeve to prevent it from being too tippy. So that's how that works. They're kind of fiddly. There, you see there's a spring in there. If you wanted to take the movement apart further, it's not too hard to do. You gotta take the balance wheel out first. There's a pin here. On later ones, there will be a little red dab of glue, and use some carburetor cleaner or acetone or something to soften the glue up so that you can remove that. Remove the spring from there. Remove the spring from the regulator. You can see this one's already out of the regulator. This is a replacement spring. This watch really doesn't run. Then remove this, loosen this up enough that you can withdraw the balance wheel. Then remove the rest of the pillar screws, and you separate the movement plates just like you would in a ordinary clock. I'm not going to do that at this time. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then the other trick is getting it all back together. It's just like assembling an ordinary clock. You've got to get all the wheel pinions lined back up. I had this movement apart, but it's been a very long time ago. And okay. And then of course reassembly is the opposite of taking it apart. If you do take it apart fully and take the balance wheel out, you will have to pass the end of the spring through the regulator here, and then back into the hole where the pin, or use a dab of fingernail polish or something. I think this one originally had glue, and I used a small taper pin to replace it with. See, this one's got a date code of February of 1961. When you put the hairspring back in, you'll have to make sure that you get the watch in beat, which this one isn't quite in. And let me see if I can point this out. The impulse pin on the balance wheel is right there and is lined up with a spoke. You see the fork there. With the balance wheel at rest, the impulse pin should point to the fork, just as you see here. It should not be left or right on either side. It should be centered. See, it's just this one is just out of beat ever so slightly. But it should line up directly, and that will give an even tick, 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 tick. I think be very careful. These are easy to, as I've just done here, get them to where they don't work correctly. Yeah. They're real cheaply made watches, and they don't hand up a lot to rough handling. Obviously, the me of 20 years ago was somewhat rough on this, and it's real easy to get the balance out of the pivot. But there you go. Use some care and patience, and you can work on one of these. If you're just trying to do repairs to the crown setting mechanism, you might have enough access right there to do it. Otherwise, you're going to have to separate the plates and work on it. So, okay. Any questions, let me know.